Welcome back to my channel, Melanated Gods of Earth. I'm your host, MODISE The High King. Royal family, if you're new, consider smashing the subscribe. If you enjoy the video, the thumbs up. Let the algorithm know what's up. Let other like-minded souls know we are out here. If you have been keeping track of my latest videos and the topic of the town, as of late, Niger is in it with international powers, right along with Mali and Burkina Faso. The Western powers are desperate to hold on to Africa's resources, right? And everything that we are doing in these days is about totally emancipating ourselves from our former colonizers who seek to neo-colonize us in the new world so they may retain their supremacy. But of course, their existence comes at our expense as African people. They are constantly coming to our continent one way or another, first by deception, then by invasion, then by outright genocide and attempted control, and then they controlled it for a good century or so, a few centuries there. But then they were booted out in independence. We didn't lose. Well, they didn't lose, we lost, because then they were booted out, and though they gave the appearance of loss, they maintained an iron grip on our continent. And they evolved, and that's what parasites do, they evolve. Right, so they can keep feeding off the host. In Africa, it's all about uranium for Western powers between nuclear weapons and nuclear energy sources. France has been mining uranium for a good minute now. This is what's called yellow cake. Yellow cake being the purified substance. Uranium in Niger, when a blessing becomes a curse. All this energy that would have been, but it's been sustained. It's been used to sustain Europe. The collective image of our former colonizers right there. But the point of today, before we get to our off topic, France desperate to hold on to Niger and its uranium. Because they are at a loss for the Russia's energy. They're at a loss for resources because they don't have energy sources of their own, as far as few coal mines here or there, you know. But Africa is where the cheddar is. Gas, coal, uranium, nuclear energy, solar energy, right? Everything. Niger, thousands gather to rally. What? Thousands gather for rally to cheer coup generals as junta closes airspace. Basically, So I imagine if the people on the ground are cheering them on, what else can be done by the West? They cannot keep lying in media saying that this coup is illegitimate or whatever. It's a revolution.
À travers la préparation à partir d'un pays voisin, l'espace aérien nigérien est fermé à compter de ce jour, dimanche 6 août 2023, pour tous les aéronefs jusqu'à nouvel ordre. Toute tentative de violation de l'espace aérien national fera l'objet d'une riposte énergique et instantanée.
75 US and Italian troops landed in Rome after being extracted from Niger. Heavy. This is an expulsion of demons. It's an exorcism. Beasts of evil. Shame for UN, shame for EU, shame for OIC, shame for African Union, shame for France. Hey, if African Union is out, no, we're not though. We need to stand together. I don't know what they're doing, but we need to stand together against this thing, because we cannot achieve African Union Agenda 63 if Western powers continue a stronghold in our resources. That's just not going to happen. But the French have been the worst in this neo-colonial project. They've been ruthless and upfront and unapologetic in their neo-colonialism. They knew that without Africa's resources, they would slide into third worldification, and it's happening. Between the pension reform protests that burned the nation to the ground, and then the next one when they shot young Nahel people burned that shit to the ground too. Here we are again. In one way, the French economy is also burning to the ground.
All right, Alexander, let's talk about the developing story of Niger and what is happening in this African nation. We had the coup.
It's always better to hear these things from people in those countries, like literally on the verge of experiencing what it would mean for Africa to emancipate itself, you know? If they are at peace with what's coming and they know that for justice to happen, we have to do what we must. And when we are comfortable enough sharing our resources, then maybe. But ultimately, right now, it has to be about us.
We have a deposed president. We
Western
have
representative.
the growing talk coming out of Europe, specifically France, but also Europe, that they're going to intervene in one way or another, perhaps via airstrikes, sanctions, maybe a combination of both. And we also have talk from other African nations saying that they may perhaps intervene in what is happening in Niger, a very dangerous situation that is developing in this country. And of course, we have the
Strange, their names are Alex, Cristoforo, and Alexander.
underlying story of why so much interest in Niger, and that has to do with uranium. So let's discuss
Uranium.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I should say
It's
straight
all
away
about
that this
uranium.
is a complex situation, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert on the internal politics of Niger. But the thing to understand about Niger is that it is, for the West, it has been a very, very important country. They've seen it as an island of pro-Western, pro-French, pro-American stability in West Africa. Now, that's not to say, by the way, that Niger is, has ever been a complete French-American vassal state. But it's leaned to the West. It's been seen by the West as reliable. There's American troops there. There's 1,000 US troops based in Niger. The US even has some sort of bases in Niger. The country is a major producer of uranium. The French are trying to deny this now, but there's no doubt at all that the uranium that is used to keep the French nuclear power plants functioning largely comes from Niger. And I understand that Niger also has produced the nuclear material that's gone into developing France's nuclear deterrent. So it's a very important country, and it's become more important in recent years as there is a sense in France, which is the former colonial power in this area and the dominant power in this area, as France and the US have been worrying that countries in this region are starting to slip from their grasp. So there have been coups in Mali and coups in Burkina Faso, which essentially changed policy. They shifted away from France. They moved perhaps more towards the Eurasian powers. The Wagner organization, Prigozhin's group, has been heavily present in Mali, for example, and providing technical assistance to the Malian military, which has been fighting various jihadi groups in Mali, and doing so. And they've been doing it more successfully, apparently, with Wagner's help than they did when they had the help of the French. Anyway, there's this sense that they've been losing their grip on Africa. And Niger, which was seen as a stable place, was one of those places which they could still rely on to keep their overall control in West and Central Africa. And now Niger looks like it's fallen, and the president has been arrested. supposedly democratically elected. I'm not going to discuss that. I don't know how democratic elections really are in Niger. I mean, others can discuss this. The fact is, he's been arrested, allegations of corruption, large.
By the way, it's only ever really condoned or supported by the West if they themselves have placed that puppet there. But if they don't agree with the president, because that president has anti-Western sentiments, then all of a sudden the election was illegitimate, blah, blah, blah. You're going to start hearing questions and sowing deceit and a potential for doubt in Western media. They love poisoning what is true and against them, or what is untrue and in favor for them that they themselves had a hand in. Oh, they will help it along with their media and voices. But when they make a lot of noise about these coups, then understand it means they are directly on the verge of standing to lose. And Africa's youth, we're not playing games no more.
Protests in the capital, people supporting the army in overthrowing this president, Russian flags appearing. You can start to see the concerns. So the US, the French, the Europeans, the Western powers, very worried about this situation. They've lost, or so they feel, a major ally, or they're at risk of losing a major ally. They're at risk of you losing a critically important source of uranium. This has also unnerved some of the other African states around, because if Niger, which seemed to be stable, can collapse in this way, the system can collapse in this way, that might spread to their countries too. So unsurprisingly, there's talk of military intervention. And
so everyone is afraid of being booted if you're found guilty of being a Western agent.
Which support the coup in Niger have now issued statements which say that if there is a military intervention in Niger, they will construe that as a declaration of war. We don't quite know what that means.
You know full damn well what it means.
Then that could result in a deeper crisis in Central and West Africa, and one which inevitably will draw in the United States in an election year, and which will create huge diplomatic and political problems.
How far do you think France is willing to go with this? How far do you think airstrikes would be very complicated for France to conduct in Niger, but there is talk that they are seriously considering it, and allegedly the president has also invited.
If the French try that noise, bro. If the French try that noise.
In the country, the deposed president. So how far do you think Macron is going to go with this?
Well, I think he's going to go as far as he possibly can, but he does come up against constraints. First of all, as you correctly say, airstrikes are going to be extremely difficult. But the other thing is that the French military is not the force that it was. It doesn't have much airlift capability, for example. So moving large numbers of troops to Niger is not really as easy or as possible as it once was. Also, there's a question about how French opinion would respond, and there's also a question of how people in Africa would respond to seeing the former colonial power intervening militarily in one of its colonies. So there are a whole host of problems, but Macron always takes confrontational lines in any particular situation. At the moment, he's sort of talking about not intervening, but I think he might very well do eventually, unless, of course, he's able to get the African states to do it for him. I think that's what the French and the Americans would prefer, get the Nigerians to send their army into to.
If you have been keeping track of topics, the whole point of the Western media's agenda with the whole, will Nigeria send troops to Niger, will ECOWAS intervene militarily, and so on and so forth, that's a way of kind of insisting through media influence that we as Africans must fight each other on behalf of Western powers because they cannot do it themselves. So irritating.
Niger, I mean, it might happen. I don't think it would be a good thing for Nigeria either, by the way. I can see that it might create all kinds of problems in West Africa. It could spread wars and chaos right across West Africa. But Niger is seen as so important in the West that I get the sense that they simply can't let it go. And that's the problem. So one way or the other, despite the risks, the temptation is going to be.
That reminds me of a comment from someone who said, what? Better to save face and just let it go. Francis.
To intervene in some form. And these people, Macron, the administration in the White House, the people in Brussels, they're not very good at resisting this kind of temptation.
Right. One of the sinister narratives that is coming out of the collective West media is that this coup is a Russian coup.
Revolution.
Is meant to move Niger closer to Russia. This is actually a fight between the West and Wagner. I've heard reports claiming that as well from collective West media. What do you make of those reports? Sergei Lavrov actually has issued a statement, and he can.
Nevertheless, family, between all the events going on out there, they are not going to let this go. So we as Africans must just put down whatever naivety we have about them not, just gently accepting that in the new world they're going to just respect our wishes. They won't. Why would they respect our wishes when all they've known to do for the past 400 years is rip us off mind, body, spirit, mineral resources, plunge us into poverty for their own benefit? Bruv, the story had to end one way or another, ladies and gentlemen. And we, the youth of this generation, are going to be the ones to end it. I have plans for my descendants, and it includes the energy sources, because keep in mind, when you break out of the brainwashing of the potential dangers of nuclear energy and you enter the embrace of modern technological advancements, then you are able to look at technology differently. Real quick, I for one am excited about these so-called modular reactors. Very small, very energy compact. I mean, you see how technically big it is compared to that small little man over there? Can you see it? Let me check if you can see it. You can see it. It's fine. So between this small little man over here and the size of this big ass reactor, imagine it horizontal. This is what I imagine would be inside like a, the real next generation, real spaceships that we're going to build for ourselves. But, I'm just getting nerdy over there. Let me not get too nerdy. When you watch Man of Steel and you see Kryptonians doing their thing, know that their planet is a lot of uranium and their technology is powered by uranium-based energy sources, nuclear-based power sources, and so forth. So we as Africans having gas and uranium, we can forget about coal if you want. Having gas and uranium, at least on those two fronts, we can cause ourselves to have energy security forever and ever. Centuries to come. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. If this is the power, the size of our power sources in this modern century, then yes, all the technologies of our hopes and dreams and science fictions can be true. It's all about how sophisticated you are willing to be. And we are approaching that James Bond level sophistication. Very clean, very, very, very safe. Very, you don't just have a thing. An energy source. It looks styling. Badass. But anyway, I get off point. But these are the reasons why we must fight, fellow African peoples. Because we must secure the future for our children, and if we don't, we will continue the hell we have been in for the past 400 years, 500 years or so. to the benefit of the European enemy. Let me know what you think in the comments below, royal family. Stay royal, stay dangerous, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.